The city of Battle Creek is an unsung railroad town where the Amtrak Michigan line joins the Canadian National Main Line through the so-called Serial City. The CN provides some of the busiest freight mainline action in the state, with trains rolling along former Grand Trunk rails between Chicago, Detroit, and Canada. Amtrak provides 8 more trains on the old Michigan Central line, adding flavor to some of Michigan's busiest rails. This is Railroads of Battle Creek, an edition of Pure Michigan Trains, presented by the Thornapple River Rail Series. It's an hour past sunrise on January 23, 2016, as there's little doubt that today will be a classic midwinter one in West Michigan. Looking east along the station platform, the crossover at Rose exemplifies the scene here in downtown Battle Creek, where the Amtrak Michigan line and CN South Bend sub share a main line for a few brief miles. Arriving now is Amtrak number 351, one of 3 daily westbound Wolverines between Metro Detroit and Chicago, Illinois. Not only is Battle Creek one of the busier stops within the state, it also functions as the crew change point for all Amtrak services as engineers and conductors are refreshed for the second half of their run. After pleasantries and passengers are exchanged, they restart westward movement, taking the medium clear signal indication at Gord, while they make the sharp right-hand curve back onto the Michigan line. While Amtrak was in the station, the Canadian National Dispatcher in Homewood, Illinois lined up CN 398, a Gary, Indiana to Toronto, Ontario mixed freight through the corridor and into the yard east of town, as suggested by the approach medium indication at Rose. 15 minutes post-Amtrak, they're rolling into town with 122 cars for points east. After 398 cleared the interlocking at Michigan Avenue, which we'll see later, RTC lined M399 out of the yard and down the number 2 main, opening the door for a potential racing situation with the already lined Amtrak 365. Alas, it was not to be, and we won't see Amtrak until well after this 125-car manifest clears the corridor.
Okay, the 528 at 164.3 Maple Street, Kansas, 941, not 941, LRM, over. Yeah, that is correct. Thank you. CN RTC. Roger, thank you, 8904.
The CN is hopping this morning, with the signal already upgrading for the next movement as soon as the logic allows.
Riding Battle Creek, approach medium road, main 1 west, over.
The eastward absolute signal on number 2 at Rose has just upgraded to its final approach medium indication as we hear the engineer of the Blue Water call his indication in the opposite direction. This train and its eastbound counterpart, number 364, are the only trains to change routes through the corridor, operating on the CN to the east towards Port Huron, while joining the Wolverines on the Michigan Central west of Gord. Accordingly, they receive their medium clear indication from the Grand Trunk era searchlights as they head through Gord and onto the Michigan line.
Medium clear, Gord.
Regrettably, our eastbound snuck up without notice as we moved towards Rose, leaving us to shoot the Q149 Montreal to Chicago intermodal here instead. Running on the left-hand main, RTC has them line for a crossover move at Gord, back to right-hand running on track 1. Today they have an impressive 157 cars behind a matched pair of SD70M-2s. Today's Battle Creek corridor is actually based upon the second alignment through town. The Michigan Central arrived in 1845 with the first railroad to be completed across the state from Detroit, eventually reaching Chicago. Their line crossed the Kalamazoo River and the town's namesake tributary to run through the heart of downtown. 25 years later, in 1870, the Grand Trunk built their Port Huron to Chicago main line through the south side of town, crossing the Michigan Central at a spot which came to be known as Barron, where a diamond crossing and tower were installed. This arrangement served the town well, but eventually ever-increasing train lengths and frequencies created a significant traffic problem for the downtown area, a local saying suggesting that no bank would ever be robbed downtown because either the Michigan Central or Grand Trunk would tie up traffic, denying any chance at escape. Therefore, in 1981, the town and railroad officials agreed to consolidate trackage to the Grand Trunk alignment, abandoning the then Conrail mains in favor of connectors at Barron and Gord. It is Gord where we move presently and where the western end of the corridor lies. While the two main lines never crossed here, they were conveniently close that when it came time to consolidate, the junction was made just west of the Grand Trunk Bridge over Battle Creek by installing this sharp S-turn to the right. From atop the Washington Street Bridge, we can look over the Gord plant and capture M348 coasting into town. One of the many long-distance manifests on this line, M348 originates in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and will terminate in Sarnia, Ontario. They have 106 cars today, behind the latest in GE and EMD DC traction. A short time later, Amtrak Wolverine number 350 marks the first eastbound passenger service of the day. Entering the corridor, the short train is led by back-to-back P-42s, an arrangement reserved for wintertime operations to keep snow out of the rear traction motors.
Remind me if we need to signal today that I'll probably remember.
Looking directly west through the trees, the old Michigan Central right-of-way is still visible up to the old bridge over Battle Creek. As one can see, the location of Gord was arranged to take advantage of the existing Grand Trunk Bridge over the swift, channeled current, which empties into the Kalamazoo River just beyond the MC structure. Now heading west, X451 has a 79-car train of auto racks in motion between Flat Rock, Michigan and the Indiana Harbor Belt Railroad in Chicagoland. They're playing it one-unit wonder style today, a feat which even surprised the dispatcher during their markup upon departure from the yard. We're now at the other eastern end of the corridor, where the Michigan Central once crossed the Grand Trunk, a place called Barron. Westbounds off the MC take a turn to meet up with the GT, whereas beforehand they cross straight over near where these electrical cabinets are today. This impressive signal bridge guards westbound movements from the CN into the plant, but just yards away, signalmen are installing the next generation of signals, colloquially known as Darth Vaders, which will eliminate moving parts from the signal system as well as handle the upcoming positive train control mandate. Our first train here is CN M396, a Memphis to Toronto manifest. They slow down to enter the yard, diverging from main number 2 to the yard lead just to the east. With 144 cars, they take quite a long time to lumber into the yard, blocking traffic here on Michigan Avenue for almost 15 minutes. Just up the street, the Michigan line approaches Barron by skirting the north side of the sprawling post-serials complex. Here, train 353 spends much less time blocking Michigan Avenue as they cruise toward their signal into the corridor. Taking advantage of their station stop, we jump back to Gord, where we capture them making the hard S-turn back onto the Michigan line, taking a different way to Chicago than the more southerly rails of the Canadian National. Their tracks quickly straighten out, allowing them to shoot westward for Kalamazoo, benefited by an approach-limited indication toward their return to a single track ahead. After an hour's silence on the rails of Battle Creek, the CN awoke once more with a characteristically long M397, the westbound counterpart to M396 we saw earlier. With 153 cars destined for Memphis and intermediate points, they're rolling west behind a capable complement of horsepower. Right behind the Memphis train was M395, destined for Chicago from Toronto. Listening to their markup with the dispatcher yielded the following data about their train. Leading them west is CN 2437, a C40-8M full cowl unit, followed by an SD60 and an ordinary C40-8. Behind the three online units, CN 5697 is an SD75I dead in tow. Behind the power, they have 74 loads and 70 empties for 144 cars total. It all measures out to 12,272 tons, stretching 9,500 feet from nose to EOT. Full of variety, we'll show you the entire train here, which takes 4 minutes to roll by. We are now at the eastward absolute signals for Barron, adjacent to the beautifully restored Grand Trunk Station. Inbound for the yard is L520 behind CN 5258, a former liquefied natural gas testbed locomotive. Returned to plain diesel service, it is classed as an SD40-2W, noting its Canadian-style wide cab. Moving one crossing to the east, we're in the midst of the Barron interlocking plant. From right to left, we see the Post Cereals plant and their spur, the Michigan line branching off to the right, and then the CN South Bend sub continuing off to the left. Now approaching is C765, an empty coal train from Essexville on the Huron and Eastern, heading back towards BNSF territory and eventually the Powder River Basin for more coal. With the early winter sun beginning to set behind post serials, our final train of the day is the number 352 Wolverine, passing the leads to NS Hinman Yard and the Kellogg Serial Spur having just left the corridor. From here, 352 will race into the night along Michigan's original main line for Detroit. Meanwhile, several more Amtraks and Canadian National Freights will continue to ply the rails of Battle Creek through the long winter's night, continuing a tradition of railroad service that stretches back 170 years in this modest midwestern city. Thanks for watching, liking, and commenting on this edition of Pure Michigan Trains. Don't forget to subscribe to the Thornapple River Rail series for continuing coverage of railroads in Michigan and beyond.